With the Taliban gaining ground in Afghanistan, the lives of these Afghan workers grow more at risk. Dr. Howard Coombs served in Afghanistan with the Canadian Armed Forces and is now with the Canadian Global Affairs Institute. He's in Kingston, Ontario. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. I'm going to jump right in and ask you about late last night. Ottawa tried to clarify that after initially telling interpreters and their families they had 72 hours to get their paperwork submitted, the application window is going to be extended. What do you make of Canada changing its plan?
I think it's a step in the right direction, but the core problem hasn't been addressed, which is Canada has created an over-bureaucratized process that requires resources and access to things that, frankly, many of these families may not be able to do. Plus, the fact, by extending the timeline for the submissions, we really haven't addressed the key issue, which is these people have to get out of Afghanistan now. This is not about timelines on submission of paperwork that they're going to have problems doing anyway. This is about getting to a safe place and being evacuated to Canada, maybe through a third country, but they must be evacuated quickly. And this extension doesn't help in that regard at all.
Okay, so when you talk about that and what the Canadian government is doing here, what would you like to see the Canadian government be doing right now to help these interpreters who helped the Canadian military during Canada's mission in Afghanistan?
In my opinion, and we have to understand the situation in Afghanistan very quickly, 80% of the country is being controlled by the Taliban. We fought in Kandahar. That's in the south. The only safe place really to conduct an evacuation at this point in time is Kabul. That's a 7-8 hour drive on a single highway to get from Kandahar city to Kabul. So we need to create a situation where people can get moving right now. They can get themselves to an airhead like in Kabul International Airport, and they can be evacuated someplace where we can do the bureaucracy associated with immigration. But right now, demanding these kinds of documents from where people have to go to authorities that are now insurgent or Taliban, access to internet that they don't have, looking for scanning facilities or printing facilities, it's an impossible request. So it's not merely about time to submit, it's about getting people to safety. And that's the problem that's not being addressed right now.
So the system that Canada announced, or the plan that Canada is trying to execute to get these people and their families to safety, you don't think is adequate and is leaving people in danger right now?
That's in fact correct. I think that we have somehow created a process that would work for a first world country, but doesn't take into account the realities on the ground in Afghanistan today.
Do you think that this initiative to try and get help to these people and their families, is this a plan that is way too late in the making?
In its current form, I agree with you wholeheartedly. What we have to do is we have to run with it at this point. We have to get planes in there. We have to get people out. And then once we get them out, we can do the screening. And if there are problems with the screenings and we decide we've got folks who are security risks or whatever they're screening for, we can address that at that time. But wouldn't we be better off right now just trying to get people to safety rather than waiting too long and putting them in a position potentially where they'll be killed?
But further to this point, do you think that the Canadian government should have been working on this years ago rather than just waiting till right now? We, of course, have a very dangerous situation with the United States announcing its military pullout, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. Is this not something that could have been done years ago rather than waiting until this dynamic change on the ground?
Well, to be fair, the Harper government did make some efforts to allow immigration, but it was, standard types of immigration with consideration given to your service for Canada. And to be honest with you, when we were talking about this in 2010, 2011 and onwards, the situation in Afghanistan wasn't what it is today. Today, there's a vacuum. And the Taliban, the insurgency has risen to fill it. The tables have turned so quickly with the U.S. withdrawal and the sudden collapse of government forces that I don't think we could anticipate it to the level that it happened. However, we should have acted more decisively, well, several weeks ago, just like the United Kingdom and the United States, who are in the middle of their process right now. We're just starting. And that's the problem, is we are late to the table. So we have to compensate for our tardiness at this point. We have to do something now. We just can't wait till all the forms are filled in and the boxes are checked. It's too late for that.
I want to talk about what's happening on the ground right now in Afghanistan. Can I get your reaction to what the U.S. is in the process of doing right now and pulling all of its troops out of Afghanistan? I believe by the end of August is the date that everyone will be out by.
You're in fact correct, and it's certainly destabilizing. It's in line with President Biden's foreign policy, but it really didn't take into account the capacity of the Afghan government to take the reins of the security problem without U.S. and really NATO support, but primarily U.S. support. The U.S. provided key enablers in terms of support to the Afghan Air Force, expertise in terms of advice, staff capacity, things that the Afghan National Security Forces relied on. And I would also argue moral support. You know, you've got a country that's acting as your big brother assisting you. And the other, I would think in certain terms, there's been a dependency created that through this sudden withdrawal, they didn't lessen the dependency of the Afghan nation on their support. So while I understand why the United States has done this, they've done it in such a manner as to create a power vacuum that is being rapidly filled by the Taliban.
As the U.S. is pulling out of the region, we've just learned that Taliban leaders were in China meeting with China's foreign minister. What do you think about Beijing sort of trying to insert itself and its influence in this region?
I think it's a brilliant move by China. The Belt and Road Initiative, their economic connectivity infrastructure initiatives, which they're extending out from China, they're already fully engaged in Pakistan. India hasn't signed on to it, but they have a number of bilateral initiatives with China, which actually have more weight than the normal Belt and Road initiatives. And if Afghanistan engages as well, China has projected an economic sphere of influence throughout the whole region. And in Taliban terms, it's a win-win situation. The relationship between the United States and China is, well, testy. It's fraught with friction. And so the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Plus, if these economic initiatives take hold, the Taliban, if they become the next government, which chances are it's probably going to happen, or form a dominant element of whatever government emerges out of this, there's economic links to a superpower. They are going to be tied into neighboring countries for the economy. And I would say in local regional politics, it's no secret that despite the official position of the Pakistani government with regards to Taliban and the destabilization that was actually happening through some initiatives and groups within Pakistan, while NATO was engaged in the region, if China has connections into all countries in this region, it may stabilize some of this fighting that was going on in that period with groups that were being supported out of Pakistan, because then it's in nobody's interests to disturb the economic and infrastructure links that are being built back to China.
Those are all my questions for now. I'm sure we'll be speaking in the future as this story and situation continues to evolve. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.